Yes, I am a certified laughter leader. And one of the reasons that I became a certified laughter leader was because of my sister, Princess Kitty, but that we're going to keep that story for right now. What I will tell you that one of the reasons I became a certified laughter leader is I always wanted to have initials behind my name. You know, people always said, oh, I'm a DS, I'm a duh, you know, and I would say Vicki Snyder, OWC. And they said, what does that mean? And I said, overweight white chick. But, you know, and then somebody pointed out to me, that's really not politically correct, but it was funny. So, but when I went to Portland, Oregon for 4 days, and I took intensive training on how to be a certified laughter leader. My husband said, but honey, I know you know how to laugh. I've heard you. Yes, you have. But this was different. And so when I took this 4-day intensive class, we learned all about laughter. We learned about communicating with people. But the most important thing for me that I took away was something called tips for good-hearted living, because I believe in having a positive attitude, as you may have noticed. So what these are tips for good-hearted living. And what I did was I have a story for each day. And after I'm done speaking, Craig will hand these out in case you find it mildly interesting and you say, what's Tuesday? And so you can look it up. So Mondays are for compliments. So can you remember the last time that somebody paid you a genuine and a sincere compliment? Raise your hand. All right. Mark Twain once said, I could live for 2 weeks on a good compliment. And it should be a real compliment, not like years ago when I was square dancing, somebody said to me, you know, for a fat lady, you don't sweat much. So it should be a genuine and a sincere compliment. Well, years ago, I went to a meeting, and the purpose of the meeting was to, you know, become a little bit more kind when somebody said something complimentary to you. So you had to say something kind to the person sitting next to you. And so I looked at the person sitting next to me. Her name was Marilyn. And I thought, oh, dear God. Her hair was greasy and she had a shirt on that said, bite me. On the back, it said Joe's Crab Shack. And I'm like, oh, dear God. And so somebody said to me, Vicki, you're very perky. I said, thank you. Perky is good. And then I turned to Marilyn and I said, you know, Marilyn, you have very straight teeth. You know, you had to be honest. And I didn't say, and they're yellow and fuzzy and honey, you want to brush them. But she said to me, thank you, Vicki. When I take them out tonight, you can have them. So Mondays are for compliments. Tuesdays are for flexibility. When I came home from this laughter workshop, I'd been married about 15 years at the time. Now it's 30. And my husband is a lovely, wonderful man, but an incredible creature of habit. So we learned all about flexibility, why it's good, why you should change things. So the first thing I did was that Sunday we got home and we walked into church and I said, let's sit somewhere different. Now, had I said, let's take off our shoes and socks and run up on the altar, he could not have been any more surprised. And then I kept it up, you know, all during the week. You know, I sat on his side of the couch, but the final straw came when I took the Pulse Bulletin and I rearranged the sections. And he's very calm. He's very calm. And he looked at me and he said, Vicki, I will not now, nor will I ever read the paper out of order. And so to this day, 30 years later, yes, we do sit in the same section at church. So that's so much for flexibility. Wednesdays are for gratitude. So what I'd like you to do right now is turn to the person next to you and tell them one thing you're grateful for right now. On your mark, get set, go. I have a daughter who lives in Rochester, New York. She's 47 years old. And when she was a teenager, she had an attitude the size of my Aunt Fanny. I mean, this girl had an attitude. And so I said to her once, I said, Heather, tell me the bright spot of your day. And she looked at me and she gave me the classic teenage eye roll. And she said, well, I guess my head didn't catch on fire today. And I'm like, all right, all right. So something in life for which you are grateful. Now, Thursdays are for kindness. And kindness is easy to give, but harder to receive. Do you agree with that? Years ago, I was a single mom, excuse me, and it was Christmas time. And, you know, I was a single mom. I was working 2 jobs. You know, we didn't have a lot of money. And I was downstairs killing some mice, and my daughter said, Mom, there's somebody at the door, and it's, Pauline Hall from church. I said, okay. So I opened the door, and here was sweet little Pauline. She said, Vicki, Heather, hi, I have something for you. And she came in and she had a box. And I looked at it and I said, oh no, it's the poor box from church. And I thought, oh, how did I know? Okay, we didn't have a car. Yeah, I mean, many, many, many factors. And so my daughter was about 6 at the time, and she's going in the box and going, chocolate pudding, like she's never had anything in her life, which, and it was a wonderful, wonderful gesture. And I should have been touched, but I was embarrassed because I got the poor box. So I went next door and I asked the woman if I could use her phone. And she said, yes. And I called my mom. I said, Mom, we got them. She said, isn't that nice? I said, no, it is not nice. She said, honey, take it, accept it. You can give back sometime. I said, okay. So at Easter that year, although we really could have used the Easter poor box from church, I gave the church money and said, please give this to somebody else, because I was proud, and it was false pride. And now I know better. And now I'd say, chocolate pudding, and I'd eat the rest of it. Fridays are for forgiveness. How many people have ever held a grudge against anybody? How many people are still holding a grudge? Well, I got you there. Sorry, Rick.
Yeah.
My ex-mother-in-law once said, I haven't talked to her in 25 years. I said, why is that? She said, I don't know. I just hate her. I'm like, all right, well, good. That's well, highly of her. Years ago, I worked at Rochester Meats. Are you familiar with Rochester Meats? Rochester Meats. No, I didn't cut the meat, but I was receptionist, and I worked with a woman who was, oh my gosh, so incredibly negative. You couldn't believe it. And she complained about her kids. She complained about her husband. So one day I came in and our desks were like this. And I just had it. And she complained about 10 things, and I wrote them all down. And I turned around and I said, that's it. I'm going on break. She said, Vicki, you've been here 20 minutes. I said, don't care. Can't stand you. And so honest to God. And so I walked up the steps at Rochester Meats, and then in came the human resource director. Nice guy. We're still friends. Nice guy. And he said, Vicki. I said, yep. And we had a chat, and, no, I wasn't fired, but, control my mouth. I said, okay. So I came back downstairs and I thought, this woman still really bothers me. And so a few days later, I said to somebody, watch the phones for a second. And she left an hour early. So I went outside and I said, hey, your name here. I can't say her name because she's still alive and she works at the Mayo Clinic, but I'm not telling you anymore. And so she steps across the property line. So she was not on, Rochester Meats. And I told her what I thought. Yeah, and I still kept my job. And so then years passed. I stayed at Rochester Meats. I went into human resources. I did some other things. I had not seen this woman in probably 10 years. And so I was dropping off a proposal at a big building in town, and I heard somebody call my name. And I turned around, and here she was, your name here. And my first thought was, oh, and I said, the 3 words you should never say to anybody negative. Do you know what they are? How are you? Absolutely. Dina Lynn, you're absolutely right. How are you? And I thought, oh, no, she's going to tell me. And she said, fine. And she nodded. And I went, wait, do I have the right person? And I said, well, how are Woofy and Muffy, your children, not their real names? And she said, they're fine. They're good. They're fine. I'm like, okay. I said, and how is so much I could have done better, but I married you instead? Again, her husband, not the real name. And she told me. And we stood there for a minute, and honestly, something came over me. And I said, I need to apologize to you. And she said, what? And I said, I need to ask for your forgiveness, because when we worked together, I did not treat you with the respect that you deserve. And she stared at me, and her eyes got watery and her lower lip started quivering. And I thought, oh, if you sing Kumbaya and hug me, it's over. But she didn't. So I got back in the car, called the HR guy, and he said, Vicki, the Lord just worked through you. And I called my husband. He said, did you just grow up? I said, I don't know. This was on a Thursday. On Monday, I was presenting at the WFMC, World Famous Mayo Clinic. I used to be a motivational speaker. Who was in the front row? This woman. Now, did she have a basket of tomatoes with her? No. Had she planned on having a basket of tomatoes to lob at me before I said, please forgive me? I'm not sure. I just know that it was a valuable, valuable lesson to me to make sure that you are being graceful and giving forgiveness or accepting an apology when it is given to you. Now, Saturdays and Sundays are great. Saturdays and Sundays, woo, I love Saturdays and Sundays. Saturdays and Sundays are for chocolate. Give me a Yahoo.
Yeah.
Oh, that was poor. Try it again.
Yeah.
Thank you. And for relaxation and prayer. Now, years ago when I was first married, my husband, sweet, lovely guy, never been married, so he didn't really know what he was getting into. And I walked through the room and I said, do you know what this living room needs? And he said, new furniture? I said, that's good. I was thinking like of a bowl of chocolate, but you know. So Saturdays and Sundays are for chocolate, are for prayer, and to remember to take time for leisure and family and friends. And this can all be summed up. These are tips for good-hearted living. And it can all be summed up in this quotation. God gave us the gift of life, and it is up to us to give ourselves the life of living well. I didn't make it up. It was Voltaire. Mr. Toastmaster.